Boom, da-ba-doom, boom, da-ba-doom.
Hey guys, Chris Peach here, and welcome to the Money Peach podcast. Hey, do you remember growing up learning how to handle money? Yeah, neither do I. So that's why we're here today, to make your money fun again. You know, we're going to talk about the principles in life that actually matter when it comes to managing your money in a way that works. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Money Peach podcast. Before we jump into another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast, I want to take a second to talk to you guys about my free budgeting form. You know, the first step to getting on any financial plan is to measure the money. And the only way to measure the money is if you are living on a monthly budget. So after this episode, head on over to moneypeach.com and please download my free budgeting form. There's thousands of people now all over the world who are taking back control of their money using this same form each and every month. The number one habit of highly successful people is they're proactive. So be proactive with your money and get yourself on a budget. Hey there, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. I'm Chris Peach. This is episode 49. On the show today, I'm bringing on Leisa Peterson from the Wealth Clinic. Now, Leisa was recommended to me by many people. She's a highly successful business and money coach, and she comes on the show to share her story. Now, her story is unbelievable because she was part of a tragedy that made international news, and it helped shape her career, taking her from the corporate world, leaving that corporate ladder and moving into what she loves doing as an entrepreneur. She's going to share that story with us. And then as a bonus, we're jumping into the world of meditation. Leisa is a master at meditation. I've been dabbling with it for a little over a month, and I wanted to ask her questions about it. Maybe you had the same questions I did. Talk about that. So without further ado, let's jump in with Leisa Peterson from the Wealth Clinic. Alrighty, Leisa, thank you so much for coming on the show. So glad to have you here. Our last episode, we actually had Monica Louie, who is a Facebook ads coach, and she's my Facebook ads coach. And we were talking, and I said, how did you get so good at your business? And she said, I have the best business strategy and money coach on the planet. Her name's Leisa Peterson. And I said, I need to get her number and get in contact with her so we can get her on the show. And here you are. It was a week later, we got you on the show.
It's so cool. I'm so happy to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be fun. We were talking just before we hit record, and I'm excited because I think you and I are very, very similar as far as the things that we're doing in our lives. And it's caused a lot of interest in a lot of the listeners out there who, like talking about, this lifestyle design that we're doing, or the idea of maybe meditation. We'll talk about that. We're definitely going to hit that. And, I guess self-improvement's a big thing. We all want to get better. We all want to do something more, right? Reach up. And so I think that's kind of your specialty. After talking with you and Monica, you definitely help people find that. So I wanted to go ahead and jump in there. But before we start, I was wondering if it'd be okay. You have a pretty incredible story, very, very unique, kind of a tragic story, but it turned out to something where you are today. And I wanted to see if you'd be okay touching on that, or maybe telling us a story, because from what I've heard from you, it's something that I think everybody should hear.
Yeah, for the exact reason I think we started with offline is the fact that many of us want to make changes in our lives, but we're afraid to do it. Does that resonate for you?
Absolutely. I mean, kind of give you, and I've talked to people on the podcast about this, but kind of my thing is, I've been a firefighter for almost 11 years now, and I love my job, absolutely love it. But I felt like there's something that I could be doing more. I don't know what it quite is. And, over the course of the last 3 or 4 years now, been transitioning into, the Money Peach blog and podcast. I feel like, okay, now I'm starting to hit my reaching up moment, these moments where, I went from just being a firefighter, which I love being a firefighter, and now becoming an entrepreneur. And I still feel awkward saying that. I don't know why. I know that I'm now an entrepreneur, but it just feels like for so long I was in the role of only being a firefighter, and now I have this double role. And so I don't want to talk about me too much, rather talk about your story, but we all have that moment. There was a moment in my life where I said, okay, I'm going to take action. So I want to hear your moment.
Perfect. I want to set the stage just because I think it helps people to get a little bit of background on the fact that I, am a money coach. We're drawn to the thing that's most painful often in our lives to heal. And I had a very long relationship with figuring out my money story. And part of my money story was that there was not enough money for me to follow my passion. So exactly like you were talking about. And what happened was I worked in the corporate world for over 25 years, simultaneous to also building a business with my husband. But I was really being drawn to the work that I do now. And I was testing it. I was trying it out. I was doing all kinds of things behind the scenes. Like I was keeping it secret and separate from the job that I was doing as a financial advisor. And lo and behold, like you said, an event happened that changed my life forever. And, I'll get straight to it. I was sitting in my doctor's office in December of 2013, and a man walked into the lobby. I noticed that my doctor, who was incredibly prompt, was running a few minutes behind. He had done several surgeries on me. It was to be perhaps our last appointment together and follow up to surgery. And this man walks into the lobby, and it was quite large clinic, and looked at me and looked at the other people in the lobby and said, "You might want to leave now." I looked up as he said that and realized that he had a hunting vest on, and he was pulling a really large gun out of his vest. Like, I don't know if it was stashed in his pants, but he pulled it out. And in that moment, he was so calm that I actually thought he might be a police officer or something like that. It wasn't like, this is a crime scene. That wasn't the feeling. I just thought something's wrong, and I'm just going to sit and watch what he does. And he started to move really, really quickly at that point. A receptionist actually stood up and tried to stop him, not knowing he had a gun. And she said, sir, you can't go back there. And then she saw the gun and she started screaming. And that was when everyone went into alert mode that there was a serious problem and this wasn't something that she knew about. And so she notified us. I got up out of my chair, started heading towards the exit door, whereas he was going the opposite way to the back of the doctor's office. And so, as you can imagine, it was just this moment that's frozen in my mind forever because I didn't know what was going on, but I had a feeling it was very serious and immediately started getting worried. So what ended up happening is I went to the third floor. We were at third floor of a doctor's building in Reno, Nevada, and I was trying to figure out, how do I get out of this space? People were running into the bathroom. People were trying to find the stairs. It was just mass chaos because he was working so fast that I think he already started to shoot. And I didn't hear the gunfire, but I was so busy kind of praying that he wasn't going to hurt anybody that people just came out of another door. The nurses in the office started running into the elevator bank area, the lobby, I guess, of that third floor. And it was just mass chaos. And so I stood there frozen and ended up seeing elevator doors open up, and I got in. What ended up happening next is just like many times when we are standing in an elevator, a hand comes in and stops the door. But there were so many people running away that just kept happening over and over again. And at some point, we realized that if we shut the door, we might be causing someone to lose their life. And they were so distraught and screaming that everyone froze in this elevator, and it just kept happening over and over again, probably 2.5 minutes, which seems like eternity in that sort of situation. In that time, I had what I feel like is almost like an out-of-body experience where I left my body. I saw that there was a chance that I wasn't going to see my family again. I thought about my kids, and I also realized that it was like the fear was so intense that it scared the fear out of me. And I thought for a moment, if I live, I am going to change my life the moment, I get out of this situation. And so that is exactly what happened. The elevator doors eventually shut. We later found out that this man had gone looking for his doctor, found her, shot her. My doctor tried to talk him down, and he shot at my doctor, hitting a relative of a patient. And then he went back and shot again and shot and killed my doctor in that moment. And then at some point along the way, he also shot and killed himself. So I'll just pause there and let everyone process that.
Hearing the story, I actually, here in Phoenix, Arizona, we're not far from Reno or from Nevada or from the Tahoe area. I remember this story. I remember hitting national news. It was a big deal. So, you tell this story. How long did it take from start to finish for all of this to happen?
It was about 4 minutes.
So starting at minute 0, you're sitting there in your chair, waiting for your doctor. And then 4 minutes later, your life is completely changed for the rest of your life. I mean, from that moment, nothing's ever going to be the same.
No, it was totally different. And I remember looking at my watch when I got outside. I looked at my watch, and that was why I knew that it had seemed like an eternity, but it had only been a few minutes.
Wow. I mean, that has to be it for not just you, but I think there had to have been other people in the elevator in that moment that had to have been thinking, if I make it out of this, things are going to change, whether it's my life, whether it's my relationships, whether it's my business, whatever it might be. I mean, I think when we hit those moments, moments of fear, moments of panic, moments of tragedy, I think that's a turning point for a lot of us. And I know a lot of us listening, we're thinking about our own moments where maybe it wasn't the moment to the level of you've had, but did that cause us to change? I could think back to a few situations in my own life, my own career that have been catalysts, and it wasn't change right away. Like yours, it sounds like from that moment you were like, okay, I'm changing things. And so for me, it was a little bit later. It was about 6 months later. I finally kind of was like that aha moment. And I said, I got to do more with my life. I got to do something different. So you said, Leisa, that you were in the corporate world at that time. You were a financial advisor.
Yeah, I had worked for, a large bank for over 17 years. And so I had bounced around. I was an executive in San Francisco and found out, this story, that I talk about, it's kind of like a bookend. I look at the shooting in Reno as one side. The other side was my father had been brutally murdered when I was in 1999, when I was about 32 at the time. And that I had a very big job in San Francisco with a major bank, and that happened. And it's kind of like my world unraveled on the inside when that happened. And so I worked in the corporate world, but what happened because of, what we'll get into, meditation and mindfulness practices that I went to heal from my father's death, I also it chipped away at what was happening for me in the corporate world. So at some point along the way, about 4 years later, I walked away from this very big job and became a mortgage banker with the same bank, which was like, I can't begin to tell you how crazy that is. Like, I don't know anyone who would ever do something like that because I was paid so much money. I was on a fast track to be at the upper echelons of this big bank. And I walked away because I could see that the corporate world was killing me. And so I went to become more solo in my path of understanding, how I could support my family. Good thing is I became very successful very quickly. So it wasn't as much of a problem, as it could have been. And then after I did that for about, 2003 till 2010, I was the banker. I didn't really like being a mortgage banker. I want you to kind of imagine the years that I was a mortgage banker and just realize that I saw the rising up of the whole collapse and the falling down of the collapse. And that drove me into becoming a financial advisor. So just helping everybody know this evolution of money.
So going back to what you said, I did not know that about your father. Very, very sorry to hear that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that kind of paints the story going back even further. So going back then to, you're 32 years old, tragedy hits you and your family. You talked a little bit about meditation. Is that when it started for you after that? Yeah.
My parents were hippies when I was growing up, and they were really involved in transcendental meditation when I was like 8 and 9. And so I will say I tried it when I was a kid, but they would be like, you know what, you're in trouble and you need to walk around the block and meditate. And I'd be like, I don't want to meditate. That's like a penalty. And so I sort of had some pretty heavy baggage about meditation and didn't do it until that whole thing happened with my dad. And for some reason, it was calling to me at that time.
Okay, so I'm going to transition a little bit here because I think this paints the perfect picture to move into the next thing, which I personally want to know more about meditation. I've talked to a couple of your clients who talk to me about what you share with them about meditation. So I have really, really been trying to, I guess, master it. I know it takes a while to master anything, but I've been full in every single morning. I have a 4 a.m. routine where I get up and the first thing I do is I try to go right into meditation. And I don't really know if I'm doing it right or wrong. I feel like I'm seeing improvements just in my daily activities, my relationships with people. And I would say the distance in my brain between my thought and my reaction has grown tremendously. So, but I still don't know if I'm doing it right. And so then somebody will ask me, hey, Chris, I know you're doing some meditation. Can you tell me about it? And I'm almost afraid to say anything because I don't want to say the wrong thing. So I'm going to turn to you as the expert because I feel like an expert is somebody that just knows a little bit more than I do. So I just want to know, tell me about meditation. What are some of the concepts that we don't quite understand as a whole? And what are some of the belief systems we have with meditation that might not be accurate? Because I'm asking this for me.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I will say is a lot of times people try to meditate and they don't have good success with it. And so they give it up far too fast. They don't stick with it. So kudos to you for making a commitment. I mean, as we know, and maybe this is part of the incentive, is the most successful people on the planet are likely to have a meditation practice. Like it's one of those things that, either faith-based or non-faith-based, they've got some kind of practice, preferably first thing in the day, that starts their day out and allows them to feel centered and, maybe gratitude and love for, who they are and what they have and who they are going to be that day. So there's a lot of incentive, right, to be trying it. Would you agree?
You hit the nail on the head. I'm a big believer in, best practices. So I pick up a book and I'm reading through this book on successful people, and it's every single person, not most of them, every single person talks about meditation. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, if the most successful people, whether it's in business, in life, in sports, whatever it might be, if they all meditate, okay, all of them, not like 50% of them, if they all do it, the most highly successful people, then why aren't I doing the same thing? That was kind of my approach. So I asked a few people about meditation and they said, oh, you're not supposed to think of anything. I'm like, what? I don't know how to not think of anything. I'll be thinking about not thinking about anything. So and people have asked me, how do you not think of anything? So I'm going to ask you that question. How does that work?
Yeah. So that has not been the kind of meditation that I have been practicing for the past 20 years or so, 18 years. I'll say that first and foremost.
Okay, so I've been doing it right. For the last couple of months. All right. Thank you. But I want to know more. I need to know more.
So, but there is a practice that can be applied, and I'd be curious, like, what are you? Let me ask some questions before I answer, because this is all about you. This is super fun because everybody's going to get a lot from it. But what are you doing if you're not emptying your mind?
Okay, perfect. So this might sound great or bad, and let me know either way. So I start off my morning. I wake up, and the first thing I do is I need to get an immediate win. So an easy win for me is I make my bed. My wife's already gone in the morning. She gets up really, really early. So I get up at 4 a.m., make the bed. By 4:05, the bed's made, and I'm like, okay, I have a win. I go downstairs. I have a chair. It's dark outside still. I sit in this chair, and I have music that I've tested. It's actually at my meditation playlist. And so I put music on because it helps me not hear the air conditioning turn on or the pool pump running or any distractions. So I kind of get lost in this music. So I do these breathing exercises that I actually researched, and I found Tony Robbins taught this breathing exercise. And it's like this, it's like a violent breathing. So I breathe in through my nose, hold it, and then I exhale really, really fast. And so that kind of gives you like a little, I don't know if it's hyperventilating or like a tingling sensation, but I actually get like a kind of relaxed sensation. And then so I do 3 minutes where I focus. And I don't have a timer. I'm just estimating. I do about 3 minutes where I just think about gratitude. Anything in my life that makes me, feel happy. And I feel that when I wake up at the first thing in the morning, I get a win, and then I go right into things that make me happy, things that make me smile, that make me feel good. It's a great way to start your day off. So for me, it's very simple. A lot of times it's my kids. A lot of times it'll be somebody that just came into my life. completely by chance, which has been happening a lot lately. And I'm just like thankful. And you start thinking about all these things I'm thankful for. And then I go 3 minutes into blessings. Now, this is where I think it's a little bit different. I might be doing this right or wrong. I'm not sure. So I think about things coming in. So things coming into my life would be the gratitude. So the blessings, I start thinking about, I want to make sure that this person's blessed, or I wouldn't say it's prayer based, but I start thinking about blessings where, I'm hoping for the blessings of, this person or this thing or something like that. So I think of like energy going out. And then the last 3 minutes, I think of mostly business goals, but not always, but I think of where I'm at now. And I visualize where I'll be in 6 months, and then I'll visualize where I'm going to be in a year. And it's not just like a brief, 10-second visualization. I actually see myself in a year sitting in this chair, working on this project and having this completed. So I'm actually seeing myself. And that's usually, it's anywhere from I would say 10 to 15 minutes every day.
Beautiful.
Is that right or wrong?
Well, first of all, there's no such thing as wrong here. We could just stop right now. Like what you're talking about is awesome. And I don't feel like I need to add anything to it. So I'll just congratulate you and working your way into something that sounds really perfect for where you're at and what's going on. And yeah, kudos to you.
I'll be honest with you. I haven't told anybody this. My wife knows that I get up early and do this, but nobody knows this. So this is kind of a behind the scenes. This is, I feel like I'm going to share a little bit more here than I usually do. So I work as a firefighter. So at the fire station, get up really, really early. I set my alarm for, usually guys get up at the station around 6:30. So I'll get up at 4:30. And the reason why I do that is I kind of sneak around to the side of the station, because if I'm going to do these violent breathing exercises and they see me doing this, they might call the mental health task force and wondering what's going on. So I haven't shared this with anybody at all. So thank you for letting me bring this out, but I got to make sure that I'm doing the right thing here.
Well, you're touching on the things that are important to you, and you're expanding them. So that's really, to me, what meditation is all about. It's about being in the present moment without grasping on to, right and wrong, judgment, beating yourself up. I mean, back to what I said, remember, I said a lot of people don't stick with it. And this was my story, is when I first started meditating, I would sit down and I would try to clear my thoughts. And I realized that time was becoming what I now look back and call my worry cushion. I'd sit there, and because I didn't have a practice like what you described, all the problems in life would present themselves in that silent space. And I'd just think about all my problems. And by the time I was done, I felt worse than when I sat down. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely know what you mean, because that was kind of my thing. And I would be sitting there and it'd be completely quiet. And I'd be trying to meditate, and the pool pump would turn on and there'd be a rattle. And all of a sudden I'd be thinking, oh man, something's breaking. I got to fix that. And then 10 minutes later, I'm I just meditated about my pool pump breaking. What is going on here? So do you use music to kind of drown that out?
I don't use music. What I did early on was it was a faith-based practice. I was practicing Buddhism. That's what I was drawn to help me heal from my father's death. And what would happen in the practices is my teacher that I was learning meditation and about Buddhist, awareness, he would continuously tell us that it was all about the preparatory work that you did before you started to meditate. And so what you had to do was create some kind of process that you would prepare yourself for being able to open up to the divine, or open up to this connection to beauty and love and what have you. So notice that what you're doing right now is you're creating essentially a preparatory practice. And in the beginning, what happens is most of our time is spent in the preparation. And even if we only got 30 seconds of just this spaciousness, and I'll be curious to hear how you feel about this, but you may feel the gratitude. You're using your thinking mind. You're thinking, oh, I'm so appreciate my wife and what she did last night for us. And I so appreciate that my kids are allowing me to work while it's summer break. And, you're thinking about these things, but there was also probably these quick short moments where you're just sitting in grace and no thoughts are happening. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Now that you say that, you hit the nail on the head. So yeah, you're exactly right. As you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, sometimes I'm thinking of, I'll give you an example. This morning, I knew that I was going to have the kids all day. My wife's at work. I was going to be off from the fire station. I was going to be coming home. And I started just picturing when I walked through the door, the kids run up and they say, "Daddy, Daddy, Daddy." But I was just picturing this in my mind. And there was like nothing after that for maybe 10 seconds. And then I moved on to my next thing. But I remember there was this like moment, and I didn't know that at the time, but now that you're saying it, there was this moment where I just was happy. Like it might've been 10 seconds, but I was just happy.
It's so beautiful to start to notice that, because what people, right, our culture is like quick fix. We want to know we're doing it right. We want to know that we did it right. And then we go on to the next thing. But what mindfulness does is it allows you to start notice the spaces between the thoughts. So you've been practicing for a few weeks in this preparatory way. You're using the breath, which is incredibly powerful to settle the thoughts down, allow you to become more centered. I also like to do grounding exercises, which are super fun, and we can talk if you want about those. And then, it may be just these very brief interludes between the thoughts where you're like, oh my gosh, I just feel so joyful in this moment. And you just hold that there and let it be spacious and open. And what happens when we're building the prefrontal cortex, which is really what we're tying into it when you talk about the science of the body and the brain, is you're extending your ability to hold that spaciousness of joy or happiness or peace. But it takes time to develop that ability, and you never criticize, you just love it up. You just say, okay, 5 seconds, I'll take it. That's all I need right now. And what happens is doing it over and over again for years. Like I've had a daily meditation practice for, close to 17 years. I have the ability to put my mind, it's kind of like a well-trained horse now, where I can focus my mind where I want it to go, and I can hold it there. And I don't judge it if it's only for a little bit or it's a long bit. I just celebrate whatever happens. Does that help?
It does help. And I have more questions if you don't mind. Because I'm into this big time. And it's on a side note, Leisa, just to throw this out there, is if you ask any of my friends and family, I am a very, very type A little OCD. I'm not like nature driven or anything like that at all. So I think my friends and family who are listening to this are probably shocked that I am waking up early, sitting down and meditating for upwards of 15 minutes every single day. And I'm an advocate for it. I'm liking it. So the reason why I want to mention that is if you're listening to this and you're thinking, did Chris join some tree hugging hippie cult? I don't know. I don't know if I did or not. That's not the question you should be asking. The question you should be asking is, how can somebody who is very, very type A, very goals driven and is checking boxes off, it's not into this supernatural power mind thing at all. How can somebody go from all the way over here to the right and then kind of come over here to this peaceful meditation and enjoy it? I would be having the lights go off in your head going, all right, maybe there's a possibility that I could be doing the same thing. And you might be like me. You might be the one that wakes up at 4 a.m., does it for a month and doesn't tell anybody because you're thinking people are probably going to call doctors and have them come kidnap me and stick me in a room with padding. And so that was kind of my fear. And I can't believe I just told everybody this. I am going deep today. Maybe it was the meditation from this morning. So anyhow, I would love to hear, because you have 17 years experience, I have 17 minutes experience. I would love to hear your morning, not your morning routine, but your meditation routine, if you're willing to share it.
Yeah. It's evolved quite a bit. And I think that the reason it's evolved is partly for me, but a lot for my students, because out of all the things I teach, I would say that meditation was the thing that people had the hardest time with. Like they love to listen to me talk about how to change their relationships with their partner. They love to hear me talk about the mindfulness of money. But when we got into meditating, there was a lot of resistance. So I feel like my meditation practice has changed because I wanted to learn how to take these type A, I mean, I am as type A as you can get. So you and I are right there together on this. I wanted to create meditations that would actually become routine for people and give them something to think about, and also would build up their prefrontal cortex and help them with money. Like I had some really big ambitions, and I've been trying to figure them out for a long time. So my meditation now is very different than what I used to do. So is that okay if I just share a little bit about what I do now then? Does that sound okay?
Please do. Please do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go super woo-woo. So I live in Sedona, Arizona. And if anybody's ever heard of this place, like we recently came here, and so I'm giving myself permission to share a little bit of these practices, because what I've found is they're very, very helpful. So when I was meditating in Buddhist practice, there's a lot of meditation on what's called the winds inside of our body. The best way I can describe that is the idea that there's energy coursing through our body at all times. When we meditate and we actually start to notice that energy flowing within our bodies, we can have more control, not just of our mind, but also of our bodies and how we show up in the world. And so I started really studying that. And all of that study for many years came together actually a year ago. And it was tuning into a practice around the chakras in the body. So there are 7 major chakras in the body. They start at the base of the perineum and they go all the way to the crown of the head. And that ties into these winds. They're coursing through. If anybody's ever heard the word Kundalini or Kundalini yoga, that might be something that you're familiar with. There's this Kundalini energy in our body. And so what I found was that I could create a meditation that taught people how to pay attention to these 7 major chakras and actually teach them about how we're living in scarcity and notice how we're holding patterns of scarcity versus abundance in our bodies. So now every morning I get up and I do a quick check, and most of my students do the same, where we've learned this meditation. We practice it so many times that it teaches us how to check in to all these major centers from, again, the base of our spine all the way to the crown of our head, and see what's in flow and what's out of flow. And once I do that, I can give some love to those areas of my body. And it's like your physical body and your emotional body. And then I'm ready to go. And so it has totally changed the way I meditate because it's made it more focused. I've also tied that work into making money and the businesses that we're running. And so you can get the idea, right? It's like the type A personality. Like, how can we use meditation and be meditating, but also have it be about being in flow, making more money, doing what we follow for our passion, all of that stuff. So that's kind of my meditation now.
It kind of sounds like you're taking your type A personality of, a go-getter, can-do attitude, nothing's going to stop me from getting my way, and you're just putting meditation right in front of it, and you say, okay, everything that I've approached my life with in the past, I'm going to approach my life with meditation all in.
Totally.
I like it.
Yeah. And then I have a quiz that folks can go and check out, but the quiz tells you which of those areas is blocked and how is that affecting your relationship with money. So it's like, time is precious. I realized that I really wanted to have a way that all the work that I do integrates together. So we're meditating, we're focused on our physical, body, and we're also focused on our money. So
I think everybody listening, it's called the Money Peach Podcast. So I'm guessing that money definitely sparks interest. I don't think we're saying that we have this love for money, but money touches every aspect of our life. And if there's a way that we can help control, create more, and meditation is one of those avenues, I would ask everybody listening, why not try it, right? I know, for example, I know that my dad's going to listen to this and he's going to say, oh my gosh, my son he's out there hugging trees and smoking peyote up in Sedona and he joined a cult, right? That's what he's thinking. That's really what's going through his mind.
I'm so sorry, Dad. Like, I am so sorry. I didn't plan it this way, so.
But it happened, and I'm telling you, I don't even know if I've been meditating right. I'm still trying to figure it out. But for the last couple months, it has been a noticeable game changer in my relationship with my wife, especially. It's been a noticeable game changer in my relationship with my kids. It's been huge in my business. As far as the things that I can't control are starting to flow into Money Peach, flow into this me as an entrepreneur. And I credit it to, I don't know what I credit to. Is it meditation? Is it that I'm pulling my blinders down and letting more things come in? I'm not quite sure, but all I know is I started this routine and I started doing these crazy breathing exercises where I feel like I'm going to pass out, but it feels kind of good. And I get in these moments where I get deep in thought and I'm happy, kind of, a happy thought. And I notice the rest of my day is a lot better. And there have been days where I didn't meditate. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like, I don't know, for those people listening who, love to work out, you work out, you feel great all day. And then the day you take off, the day that you just are so busy, you don't get to the gym, at the end of the day, you're like, I feel like crap. That's how I feel when I don't meditate. I really don't love it. I'm like, man, I should have forced myself this morning and I didn't. So I'm telling you, if you're listening and you're kind of thinking, I don't want to go hug trees and smoke peyote, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do any of that. You can do versions.
I don't do that. Yes. So yeah.
Wow. I am so excited because I don't know why I'm excited. I guess it's because I meditated this morning, but I am excited. Okay. So I'm going to leave it there on meditation because I think we really hit that hard. That's the most I've ever talked about it. And I haven't really talked about it at all. So that is the most I have talked about it. Thank you for bringing it, or thank you for like bringing it out of me. So here's the next thing I want to talk about. I want to talk about you. Okay. So you went from corporate America for how many years?
A long time.
Okay, perfect. And you transitioned into entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. What was that like? Because there's many of us listening right now that work for somebody, we work somewhere, and we're thinking, you know what, there's something that I'm passionate about, there's something that I'm doing, but I don't know if I have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. I want to do it, I want to try. So what kind of swung you in that direction?
I had been an entrepreneur all along, but it was my husband's business and I sort of was behind the scenes helping him. We develop real estate. So we were doing that for a long time. So I knew that I could do it, but coming and starting a business that's all about your own personal passions, like that's a little different than, building real estate, for example, or doing something that you like, but you might not absolutely positively love in every possible way. So I guess that's kind of what I would speak to is that's what I've done in building my business. And that's been the bigger journey for me is how do you show up in a way where you're talking about things just like this conversation, you're talking about a passion. It makes you kind of uncomfortable because you're like, I don't know if I'm doing it right. Like all of that stuff comes up when you do what I've stepped into. So does that make sense?
Sure. And so tell us, what is it that you do as far as being a business strategy and money coach? Kind of give us an idea because maybe somebody listening goes, you know what? I could use you. I could use a business and strategy and money coach. Yeah. I know there's, people, my students inside the program, they come to me because they say, look, Chris, I need some help with my money. And so maybe there's somebody that's on the fence about getting started, or maybe they're in business and they're struggling and they don't know why. So kind of walk us through how you can help us.
Sure. I think first and foremost, I do focus on how can I help people who are building businesses have a loving relationship with money. But if you don't have money coming in, you're not going to love it. So I've structured my business that I am a coach. I do work with people very specifically to the areas that they need the most attention. So for some people, it's the relationship with money that's actually causing the problems that keeps them from having the money in their business coming in. Sometimes people have lots of money coming into their business, but they are not saving it, for example. Or maybe they're saving it, but it's almost like it's under the mattress and they're not actually investing it. So I look at the situation for each person individually, and I use these skills that I've developed to help them. So if somebody's building a business, like I think Monica was talking about on your podcast, I was very focused on making sure that her relationship with money was really crystal clear. And we did some inner work before we started working on her business. So that was like a month or so. And all of a sudden it was like, now she was really ready to show up and do what she was here to do. And it was kind of like out of a rocket ship. I just watched her because she was so clear at any baggage that could have kept her from being successful financially. We got that dealt with in the beginning, and then she just took off. And that's my dream client, right? Where a lot of times we don't realize that this money garbage that we're dealing with inside of ourselves that I uncovered in my own life and then started helping other people do the same holds us back. It keeps us from becoming profitable. You may know that 63% of businesses are not actually profitable. I mean, let's just focus on that for a second. Like, why are they in business? Would be the first question we should all ask. When I was a mortgage banker, most of the time I would work with very successful entrepreneurs who were making a lot of money. But, well, I shouldn't say most of the time. Those were like the elite people buying houses in Lake Tahoe area for millions of dollars. Most entrepreneurs that I worked with would come in and they had no savings. They had no retirement. They had nothing but their business. And it was not just a one-off thing. Like, I've since come to learn that this is how a lot of entrepreneurs in the United States, at least, are living. It looks good on the outside because they're able to pay their bills. They're able to keep afloat, but they're not actually socking money away. And I personally think that it's because they have a lot of money conditioning that isn't helping them bring it to profitability. So that's a big part of what I do. The other part is how can we, like I said, those situations where people are making a lot of money, but they're actually not good protectors or custodians of that money. And it's the same kind of inner work, but then, once we're done with that, then they go off and they start saving money and they start investing money. And I teach them about those things because I am a certified financial planner. I can help people know that they're hiring professionals that can really support them. And so it's a kind of a full stop shop when it comes to the entrepreneur and their journey about, building wealth over time, which is the thing that I'm probably most passionate about at the end of the day. And it's not just the outer wealth, right? It's first and foremost that you feel so much joy inside that the money shows up as a reflection of the joy that you're feeling about your life. So I'll stop there. See what you think.
Yeah. So Monica has been helping me with my Facebook ads. We talked about that last episode. And so she's a Facebook ads coach. And I remember talking to her, and she had never advertised. She had never spent a penny in advertising. It had all been through word of mouth. And I said, wow, I'm like, you have grown your business tremendously, very reputable through word of mouth. I said, what is your secret? And she just kind of laughed and she goes, my secret is I have Leisa Peterson. And I paused and I'm like, that's it? She goes, yes, that's it. And I go, wow. And then so she started telling me a lot about, exactly what you were talking about with the beginning stages. You don't just jump right in and say you got to do A, B, C, and D. There's some things that you have to work on and mend through before you can really grow. And so when she was explaining all this to me, and then we did talk a little bit about meditation. All of a sudden I was like, is there any possible way I can get her phone number from you? Like, I want to call her just to pick her brain. So do you work with mostly women?
No, I probably about 65% women, 35% men. It's funny going back to when I was teaching meditation, I was still in my business, in money business solely. All of the people that showed up for my meditation classes and stuck with it were all men. And so I feel a lot of compassion. I didn't want to leave them out. And so, yeah, I still continue to work with men, and it's super fun. I also want to say that in my journey of building wealth, my husband and I became very, very financially successful in our real estate business. When I started Wealth Clinic, I didn't give myself enough credit for how much I had learned through that process. And now 3 years into building an internet business, I have also learned so much. Like I've invested, embarrassing amounts of money in my own education and training and, coaching to be able to learn how to create an internet-based business. So it's kind of unusual, right, that we could do the inner work, but then when, Monica was ready to go, it's like, well, we could dive into all these things that I've been applying in my business. And that is really powerful to be able to do both. Even though I may not always do that, right now it's been interesting to me. I see my business kind of expanding more into the money and mindfulness and maybe not as much of the business coaching long-term because it's very time consuming. But for now, it's been incredible to be able to watch somebody like Monica and my other clients do what they're doing.
I think it's okay to pivot. I think you have to pivot. You can't be doing the same thing, stuck in the same thing. I look at this podcast as, the first 10 to 12 episodes of this podcast, I didn't have one guest on. I just talked about the money issues, problems out there, how to solve them, how to get better. And I enjoyed doing it. I really enjoyed doing it. But then I had an entrepreneur come on to talk about money. And I thought, I really like doing this. And I started noticing, so did the listeners. And so I did this pivot. And we still call it the Money Peach podcast, but every single time we're talking about meditation for the last 20 minutes, right? But it all connects, right? Money touches every aspect of our lives. So I think we pivot, but we still stay in the same column, I guess what you call it, the same vertical. But yeah, I think you have to pivot, right? If you don't pivot, people are going to move away from you and go towards what is current, what they like doing. And so I think that's great that might be from meditation that you're seeing this, right? That you're seeing this,
right.
This movement. Yes. Who is your ideal client?
Good question. I've just spent a week working on that and I don't know if I could still answer. I love people. I'm just going to say, I love everybody if they're interested in what I do. So that's not a really great way to run a business. So what I found is I love working with particularly women who have reached a place in their life where they realize that the customary ways are not working for them. They're really ready to shake things up. Perhaps they have faced their own tragedy or difficult times, and they are ready to take a great deal of responsibility for their own future. And that seems to be a real important pivotal moment where it's like, I can do this. And I just want to find people to, help me get where I want to go. So a driven, typically very excited about putting things into practice, not afraid to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty, not thinking that they can just outsource it all to other people to make it magically happen. Those are some things that come to mind. And then open. Many of my clients have never meditated before in their life. They have not done this stuff. I think I'm a really good bridge because I do focus so much on the logic of why something matters. Why should we try this? That it's a safe place to come and try something that scares you. But, they just need to be open enough to say, I'm open to, trying some stuff, even if it seems a little bit too woo-woo. I'm willing to see what happens. And then when they get some results and they come back, just like you're saying, I feel so good, then that keeps the momentum going forward. I want them to make those decisions for themselves if this is, the right kind of coach or the right kind of program for them. So, yeah.
One thing my wife has lived her life by, she was on the podcast too. She talked about this in one of the episodes we had her on, but she said that, her mantra, her thing that she tells herself every day is do one thing every day that scares you. So you just mentioned maybe 20 seconds ago that, I think it sometimes scares people. And I think that's a good thing. I think you have to do things that might feel dangerous, that might scare you. If you interview, you ask, you look around, you read books on the most successful people on the planet, they all say the same thing, right? They don't play it safe all the time. They do things that scare them. They do things that are uncomfortable. They do things that are maybe against normal. Because, right, normal is paycheck to paycheck and broke. No money. Not meditating. And I think it's okay to be scared. So the reason why I'm saying this is if you're thinking oh, this sounds scary, that's a signal. That's a good thing. That is a good thing.
It's great. I love it.
Wow. All right. Last thing I want to transition to, we're getting close on time here, but last thing I wanted to talk about, because it's important to everyone, is you had just said 63% of entrepreneurs are not profitable. And I know I went on your site and I was looking on your site, you have a lot of things on profitability. Can we go a little bit deeper into that? Why aren't we profitable? And the reason why I'm asking is the first year of my business, I don't think I made any money. I think I was learning how to be an entrepreneur, I think there was a 6 to 9 month period that I was wrestling with the idea that I was an entrepreneur. And I don't think I really made any money that first year, maybe just a tiny little bit, but it wasn't noticeable, put it that way. Is that normal or is that wrong? Or because I think a lot of us, well, I know I've talked to a lot of people, feel that way. Like, wow, I'm going to work for, is it the rule that you have to work for a year and not make any money? What do you say to that?
I say that we have to be careful about judging our experience with entrepreneurship according to anyone else but ourselves. So it's really easy to kind of say, oh, they did this and I did this, therefore, I'm not as successful or something. All these people that I've interviewed for my own podcast who have had, many, many years of great success are really clear that first 3 to 5 years in business is difficult to become, profitable in the way that you want to. And I would say the first year, typically people are going to be putting more money into the business than they're taking out. It's a very unusual situation, even in the first 2 years, to be making a profit, especially if you're brand new to your distribution, to your audience, to all these areas. You've got to give yourself credit that it takes time, especially on the internet, to build a reputation and have people know what you're doing. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. But that 3 to 5 years is the rule of thumb. However, when you're moving, from 3 years into 5 years, I think that you should be having enough, money that you're able to hopefully pay your own bills. You may not be saving a lot of money because you're still putting money as an investment into the business. If you want it to grow, it's kind of important. And it's that 3 to 5 year window where I think businesses don't do enough examination where they say, I demand profitability. I'm not going to be continuously stoking that investment engine unless there's a really good reason for that. But if you don't pay attention to being able to pull money out of your business in that 3 to 5 years, I think you can get in a trap that I was talking about where people could be, entrepreneurs for 10, 15, 20 years and not have anything to show for it. So you've got to be very mindful of why are you doing this? And are you actually able to create a business that you can take money out of? And the big thing that happens in that 3 to 5 year mark is leverage. So a lot of businesses are not structured to create leverage. But if you don't create leverage, then every hour that you work, you get money back for that hour. But there's not this multiplication thing that's happening. And that can be a very, you end up working so hard that you get worn out and you don't have the money to, bring other people to support you. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff in it. I'm simplifying it, but does this make sense?
No, that makes sense. And I'm glad you said that because it makes me feel a lot better. Because the first year it was fun because I was excited. I was passionate. I'm still super passionate. Obviously you could, I think, tell, but I was excited, passionate, but I wasn't making any money at all. And I remember thinking, wow, I am working my butt off. And then I was reading stories about, entrepreneurs and interviewing different people. And they said, yeah, if it's because you're starting a business, right? I wasn't going into debt. So I think I was maybe different in that aspect. It wasn't really, it was costing me more, I guess, time, energy. It was costing me money that I had, but I wasn't going into debt to do that. So I'm glad that you kind of smoothed that out because I didn't like telling people that. Like the first year, like how much did you make your first year? I pretty much made nothing. I lost 10 pounds just sweating it off in my office, but yeah, that's kind of what was going through my mind. So
yeah. And can I have one thing that I add to that?
Oh, please.
Imagine that, let's say 5 years out for you and I both, imagine that you set a stick in the sand that you think no matter what, I want to be able to be my expenses, and this could include your business expenses and your personal expenses, no matter what, I want to shoot for a 50%. Like, let's throw out this, 20% goes to expenses. Let's go to a big number, like 50% of my income is going to be able to take care of everything. And the other 50% is going to be for savings and for all the cool stuff, extras maybe to life. Like, let's take some big steps in saying that that's the goal I'm shooting for. If you end up at 75, you're doing pretty well. But I think we have to be careful about setting too low of expectation where, okay, maybe 10%. It's not enough for many of us, especially I'm 50. It's like, you can't start saving 20% like at 50. You need to have some pretty big numbers. So if you're going to be in business, you're going to be risking as much as you're risking, then let's set some really high targets for what's possible. And I promise you, if you set that, then good things are going to happen, and it doesn't hurt to set some high goals. Is that okay?
I'm glad you said that, because I have a personal mentor that I meet with twice a month, and he hits on that all the time. He says, if average society tells you that, 10% is a really good number in something, you got to think, yeah, 10% is really good. I'm going to go for 20 because 20 is awesome. And so you never settle for what society tells you is going to be good or good enough. You never settle for good enough. You always think, okay, if that's the good enough number, what's my number going to be? Kind of always keep that in your mind. And so I'm glad he said that to me, because I was like, yeah, whenever you hear somebody say, yeah, it's when they're saying, yeah, you can get 10% return or you got to save 15%, if you're saving zero, that's 15% is huge. But if you're saving 15% of something, you think, well, 15% is average. Why not 50? Why can't I be above average? So again, that goes back to, I think, your self-concept and being willing to have these goals that sometimes are always outside of reach. It's not an easy thing to grab.
Totally. But it also opens your creative mind to what is actually possible. What would it take to create something like that? I mean, Mark Zuckerberg, right? His number is like 1%. Less than 1% of what he's making is he actually able to consume. So, just look at that. Like, it's fascinating when you start to think, well, what could I create that would actually create those kinds of returns on investment? So it's fun.
Forces you to open up your mind, because it's now you have to open it further because you're not getting there as easily. Mm-hmm. All right. Lastly, you told me earlier before we started that you wanted to give Money Peach listeners something, a little freebie. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is fun. A couple weeks ago, I got to meet Damon John from the Shark Tank, and we were asking him questions. And I was so excited because he referenced a practice that he does every single morning, and it's similar to what we were talking about earlier. And so the reason I got excited is this is actually a practice that I've been teaching myself and other people for several years now, and I call it the Wealth Flower Exercise. And what it is a series of questions and a space to write the things down that are absolutely, non-negotiable in our life. Like, what are the things that are most important to us? And also allow us to start paying attention to what are the things that are beyond our belief system. So like for me, a couple years ago when I started this practice, I ended up writing down this I came up with the Wealth Flower exercise. I thought, well, I'm going to try it out before I give it to anybody else. So I spent, a couple weeks answering the questions. I listed out for all the flower are petals that represent things like health and relationships and money and the environment we live in and these core elements of our life. So each of the petal is a different core element. The idea was for each of those areas of my life, what do I really, 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 really want? So one of the things I did with my relationships, I have 2 kids and I've been with my husband for 30 years. And I realized that especially building a business, it's easy for those things to not get as much attention as they want. So I started creating some statements about, well, what do I want in my relationships with my family? How do I want those relationships to feel? How do I want to be communicating with them? What do I want to be able to do every single day? Remind myself in my meditation, this is important to me. This is what I'm going to create for the day. So this practice, the Wealth Flower exercise, is what we're giving listeners to be able to dive into some questions that will hopefully inspire them to write down the things that are most important to them, even if they don't seem reasonable. And one of the things that I put on my list back in the end of 2014, was I said, I want to sell everything. I want to live out of a suitcase. And I just want to travel with my husband and my son, and my daughter was going off to college. And so sure enough, it took me about, 8 months, but we sold all of our stuff and we actually lived out of suitcases and moved to Hawaii for an extended period of time. And it all happened as a result of the wildflower exercise. So who knows what might happen if you check this out and try it. I'd love to hear what people think. But back to Damon, he said, every single morning I get up and on my nightstand, I have this list of things that are my top goals in life, and I go through them every single day. And that's exactly what you'll have at the end of the practice.
So most people set goals one time a year, New Year's Day, right? They set their New Year's resolutions. They look at them about 2 to 3 times throughout the month and they dissolve. And then you got a guy like Damon John that wakes up 365 days a year. And the first thing he does is he rolls over and he looks at all of his goals every single day. And so just think to yourself, who is going to be more likely to hit their goals? Somebody that looks at them every single day, the first thing they do when they wake up, or when you do your New Year's resolution and you look at them 3 times a year. And now we have this tool for being here on the show that you can download, grab. And is it free?
Yeah, free.
And
Yay.
it's free, which is awesome. So the only reason that you won't download it is because you won't download it, right? There's nothing stopping you. We'll put the link to it in the show notes, and it'll be moneypeach.com/49 download. So moneypeach.com/49 download. I said that right. And there'll be links in the show notes. So take a look at it, grab it, and make changes today, whether it's meditation or whether you're going to go out and hug a tree and smoke peyote in Sedona like we're doing. Just kidding. Whether it's something like that, right? Just make some changes, make some positive changes in your life. You listen to this show for a reason, and you definitely want to make a change. And I'm encouraging you, and so is Leisa, that, do something that's scary. Do something that's just a little bit out of your comfort zone, like telling the whole world that you wake up early and meditate and do these breathing exercises. And I will tell you this, you will feel better. Absolutely. All right, Leisa, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a lot of fun. This was, you could tell, right up my alley. I love talking about this kind of stuff. And where can we find out more about you?
So to learn more about me, I'd say go to wealthclinic.com and you'll see the wealth flower exercise on that page. You'll also see the quiz that I referenced that's right below it. So if you're interested in figuring out where the money is blocked, then you take the quiz and it'll start you with some educational information about what I was talking about in meditation.
And you have a podcast as well.
I do, The Art of Abundance.
All right. We're going to check that out. I'll have links to everything that Leisa and I talked about in the show notes. Thank you again, Leisa. This was, I think, one of the longest episodes we've done. But like I said, I don't put a time cap on it if it's awesome. So thank you so much. Appreciate you. And we'll see you again next time.
Thank you.
And just like that, we wrap up another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast. All the show notes, the links, anything Leisa and I talked about, including the Wealth Flower assessment that she's giving away, can be found over in the show notes at moneypeach.com/session49. That's moneypeach.com/session49. Special thanks to my producers, Steve Stewart, my sister, Kayla Sloan. Without them, this show would not be possible. We'll see you guys next week with another amazing episode of the Money Peach podcast.
Boom, 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 boom.